fresh clashes have erupted in Syria between secular rebels and al-Qaeda-linked extremists. It's the latest spate of infighting among the anti-Assad camp, which has seen a rapid rise of radicals and their numbers. Western analysts put the total number of rebels at around 100,000. They are split into as many as 1,000 different groups. 10,000 fighters are radical jihadists with links to al-Qaeda. Up to 35,000 others are hardline Islamists who share many of al-Qaeda's views. That leaves the more moderate rebels vastly outnumbered. Let's now get reaction from independent news editor James Corbett. Mr. Corbett, welcome to RT. Good to see you with us. So, once again, what exactly are the radical Islamists fighting for in Syria?
Well, I don't think we have to go very far out on a limb to really discover what they are fighting for. We can take it even from the words of the international terror boogeyman spokesperson and U.S. collaborator Ayman al-Zawahiri, who used the opportunity of his 9/11 12th anniversary audio message to specifically call for Islamic fighters in Syria to not cooperate with non-Islamic fighters. The end goal of this, of course, is jihad for the purpose of establishing an Islamic state. And that's exactly what's motivating these fighters specifically to be the ones who commit mass executions, take over entire towns and kill men, women, and children with impunity, film themselves eating the livers and hearts of some of the people that they've killed. And the other atrocities that we've seen coming out of this conflict have been waged specifically for this purpose of establishing an Islamic State.
And how does the increasing infighting among the opposition forces affect the positions of the Syrian government?
Well, I suppose from the Syrian government's point of view, to have a divided opposition is a good thing, but I don't know if it makes much of a difference because, of course, as you mentioned, there are about 10,000 of these Islamic fighters, the jihadists, and they are by far the largest percentage in terms of the fighting force on the ground in Syria. They are the ones that are most actively engaged in the fight because these tend to be the battle-hardened jihadists who have spent time in other places such as Chechnya and other places learning how to commit jihad. So they are the ones who are taking the brunt of the actual fighting itself. So even if this does mean that the more moderate rebels, quote unquote, have been more sidelined in this conflict, it still means that the Syrian army is still basically fighting against this army of 10,000 jihadists. And these are the people who seem to have the least scruples when it comes to the way that they engage in this conflict and the extent that they're willing to go to.
Yes, and what unites all those people, all those opposition rebels, is their hate of President Assad. Why is it so hard for them to come together and fight as a single front?
Well, I think this is based on the fundamentally mistaken assumption that's often pervaded in the media that what's happening in Syria is some sort of civil war, is some sort of internal conflict. And a lot of the narrative has been framed around that frame. But I think it's fundamentally false to assert that. I think we have to understand what's happening in Syria as the planned result of a nearly decade-long intervention, foreign-funded, foreign-armed, foreign-supplied, foreign-trained intervention in Syria that has been arming and training Syrian opposition groups on the record, documentably, back to the Bush administration as far back as 2006. They were starting to fund and train the opposition forces in Syria. So we have to understand that this is not some sort of spontaneous uprising, and that as a result, there are many different outside forces, including the United States, including the Saudis, Qataris, and others, who are funding and financing their own fighters to go into this conflict. And many of them are motivated for different reasons and are there for different opportunities. And some are motivated as mercenaries. Others are motivated by jihad and the chance of establishing an Islamic State. But just because they all have the same end goal of overthrowing the Assad government does not mean that they're there for the same reasons.
Yeah, we've heard, of course, some of those rebel groups have refused to honor the international agreements on the chemical disarmament of Syria. Will they be able to hamper the whole process?
Very easily so, and I think we can see this from exactly what kicked off this entire process in the first place. The August 21st attacks in Ghouta, which still there has not been one shred of evidence to suggest that that was actually coming from the Syrian government. The UN chemical weapons inspectors did not conclude that. That was beyond the mandate of their investigation. And in fact, all of the evidence continues to point to the fact that that was actually an attack that was launched by the rebel groups as a type of false flag provocation in order to cross the red line line in order to get military intervention from the U.S. and its allies. And in the exact same vein, all it would take is one such similar incident for it to be immediately, again, blamed on the Assad government and used again as that excuse for calling off the current UN Security Council resolution. So it's very, very easy to get this disarmament process off the rails. It would be much more difficult to see this through to completion, even if everyone at the table has the best intentions. All it takes is one rogue group with access to chemical weapons to commit some sort of attack and to derail the entire process.
All right, independent news editor James Corbett. Mr. Corbett, thank you very much indeed for your time. We appreciate it.